Today we're going to be taking a tour of an active coffee farm on the big island of Hawaii. And if you stick around, we're also going to learn how to roast up some beans fresh at home, and hopefully we're going to see what makes Kaʻū so special. This is Kaʻū Coffee Mill, and they're pretty much neighbors with the super cool Mamaki tea farm that we featured in last week's episode. I teased the coffee tour back in the Big Island video, and since you guys asked for it, today is going to be all about Kaʻū Coffee. Oh, and before I forget, I want to give a huge thanks to Kaʻū Coffee Mills and to Pete, who's going to be guiding us today. He's super knowledgeable, so I hope you guys enjoy.
So Mr. Olsen acquired the land in the mid-90s. The acreage that we stand on is about 10,000 acres in total of what he bought in the mid-90s. That is also separated with the coffee we developed here along with the macadamia and also the other agricultural areas that we have for cattle and other farmers to grow here at the estate. The estate coffee beans itself is about 150 acres in total that we're cultivating from annually each year. Our establishment in terms of our own acreage will produce about 300,000 pounds of coffee each year, give or take. But in total, as of right now, we acquired about 3 million pounds of cherry this year. And that has to just, of course, keep up with the production of coffee. The cherries itself all have to be hand cultivated, so no machinery is used, just to keep it on the gourmet side of the industry. Usually in cultivation, we're gonna actually cultivate it when it's much more red, like this guy right here. All of which is hand cultivated within some of the farmers that we brought in to the establishment. The establishment was first actually a sugarcane plantation as well. That ended, of course, in the 90s, unfortunately, due to the bargaining acts. And then we do have two reservoirs here at the estate as well. So the two reservoirs originally was used to water the fields. We use it majority of the time to actually produce the hydroelectricity at this estate. Parts of the time we are going to water the field, but unfortunately we don't really need to push for that just because of how wet it is here in this part of the island. So we're actually being exposed to about maybe 50 to 60 inches of rain annually each year. A lot different from the Kona region, so even though Kona is a bit closer, they're only producing about 40 to 50 inches of rain annually, which is why there's a bit different complexity towards the coffee itself. The primary taste difference is gonna be just the acidity. We have a lot less acidity. Our beans are a lot more fruitier and smoother because of that as well. Consistency and what we call legs towards the coffee will be a lot not as thick and fuller bodied as some coffee. The coffee industry, there is only 4 different varietals that produce any types of coffee. You have, of course, Arabica, which is the most popular among the varietals. Then you have smaller ones like Robusta, which is higher in acidity. Higher in caffeine content, but of course the drawback is the higher acidity. Along with Libica and Zanatica as well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is several farmers that brand into the Starbucks industry. So they store some of their beans towards Starbucks here on island in getting, of course, selling off their coffee. So the smell you're smelling right now, the astringency has to do with the pulping or the production of the coffee. So when we call natural, semi-washed, and washed, those are all different processings we're doing in terms of making your guys' coffee today. The industry itself does majority of a washed coffee. Just an extraction of all the entire layers set out to dry as well. It does make about 70% of the coffee's industry. 30% of course will be of semi-washed and natural. In terms of production, first we purchase any of the coffee or any of the drop that we produce here at the estate that have been cultivated, all down here at the facility. Afterwards, for what we call natural, that will be it for the process. So we're keeping everything intact from the skin and seeds. In that process, there is about 18 layers that is being preserved in that particular coffee. For semi-washed and washed coffee, they get put into the pulper. So as it moves down into the machine, it goes into this pulper right here where the skins and seeds are extracted. The skin itself will move up the conveyor rather than the seeds will be caught with one of the buckets here on the side. And then later on, lightly washed and set out to dry for summer. For washed coffee, it's a bit more rigorous. After the light washing, it's going to go through a machine to extract the nuclei along with another washing to it as well, just so that it can just be straight from the bean. You're just trying to exclude all 18 layers and set these out for dry as well. In terms of the drying phases for what we call semi-wash, you can produce any of the honey processing. No honey, unfortunately, used in that processing. It's all based on the complexity as it sits out to dry over time. There's about 8 different honey processing. The state only does about 2, unfortunately. We do the hardest and rigorous one, which is called black honey, and then we do the easiest one of the red honey called the semi-wash. That alone sits out here to dry for about 2 to 3 days for the semi-wash. For the red honey, the black honey is about 14 to 21 days, give or take. So in this part of the phase right here, you may see like the beans itself drying out. We're just trying to extract as much moisture that we put into the bean as possible. And here, it sits out here for several hours depending on what we're producing. So semi-washed and washed will only sit out here for a few hours rather than natural. We'll sit out here for the bulk amount of time for about 1 week. So there's about 1 to 18 different sizes of beans here at the establishment. So we're actually sorting that out on a graphic table and with the machine that we got all the way from Kyoto in terms of producing high-graded quality coffee. Afterwards, it will be sent back into the medic bag and then stored right here in the back of the facility, along with stored into that facility as well. Oh, and the production process as well. What happens is these beans itself will produce thin parchment-like skins. That's all extracted here in the process. Some of them, of course, will just be about 6 layers we actually strip away from. But like the natural itself, we have to strip away 18 different layers. So once they pack the very top, they'll heat up the drum to about 180 to 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Afterward, once it gets to the correct temperature, we're going to actually pull down that lever. The beans will be inserted in the process as well. Usually in about 12 minutes of a time frame will be the first cracking phases. The production of both the light and medium roast can be produced in that particular area as well. The light roast itself will be dropped at 5 seconds after the 12-minute time frame. And then medium roast will stretch between 12 minutes to about 13 to 14 minutes. All of which will be checked rigorously throughout the Dow stick as well. Darker roast itself will actually be produced in the 15 to 16 minute time frame. That one itself will have the second cracking phase as well, and that'll be the maximum expansion of the beans. Anything pushed past that, the 18-minute time frame will be what we call European or very dark espresso light roast. Everything's 100% Kaʻū grown coffee. So it's a little bit separate once you go into the Kona branding system, because currently the laws do allow you to only hold 10% of a bean to call it a Kona blend or Kona Coffee to use the name. So one thing is, like we say, integrity to your guys' cup. The Kaʻū mill does try to keep a lot of integrity in producing the coffee. Feel free to try the coffee if you don't prefer the coffee black. We have cream and sugar right up here in the front. I do recommend lightest to darkest. And finishing off with our specialty of the black honey at the very end.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely tour, but if you're like me, I bet you're dying to know how this coffee tastes. I ended up getting a bag of the green stuff and I took it home to roast it myself. This should all look pretty familiar if you've seen our coffee episode from a few months ago, but if not, here's a little refresher. Start with a very heat-tolerant pot with some decently high sides to stop the beans from flying out, and then set it on medium-high heat. Let it preheat for about 3 to 4 minutes or until you can get a splash of water to sizzle around the pan. When that's ready, you can dump in your beans. This preheating step is just to make sure that your roast doesn't take forever. By the way, I'm using the natural beans today, which are going to be minimally processed, unwashed beans that take about 2 weeks to dry at the facility. In theory, this should give us a good sense of the terroir or local characteristics of the Kaʻū estate. Make sure that you don't overcrowd the pot, which can make it difficult to get an even roast. Usually I'm only roasting 1 cup of beans at a time, which is good for about 8 to 10 cups of coffee. I don't really drink a whole lot of coffee these days, and I don't want to make these beans sit around for more than a couple weeks. But if you want to make more, get a bigger pot or just do more batches. When it comes to even roasting, you need to constantly move these guys around to make sure that they don't sit too long and scorch against the pot. Once you start to see a little bit of color developing on the beans, turn the heat down to just above medium and keep stirring. Shake the pot around once in a while for fun and to toss around the beans that you might have missed. If you've been managing the heat well, at around the 6 or 7 minute mark, you should start to hear a consistent stream of popping sounds. In the industry, this is referred to as first crack, and it's a sign that the small amount of water hidden inside the beans has finally managed to escape the hard husk. When you feel like you're in the middle of first crack, turn your heat down to medium-low and basically stir things around until you get to the color that you like. There's a lot of nuance to this, but in general, lighter roasts carry more of the beans' characteristics, like that particular Kaʻū flavor profile that Pete was telling us about earlier, and darker roasts carry a more standard roasty coffee-ish flavor. My personal opinion is that if you took the time to source some quality green coffee, it's probably best to keep things on the lighter end. That said, if you stop the roast too early and barely get past the first crack, you'll notice some more cereal flavor like roasted grain and quite a lot of acidity. It's definitely got a good sense of place, but can be a bit tough to swallow, so I like to push things to a medium light roast, which I do by just using a commercial bean as a color reference. A little more than 10 minutes after we started, and this guy's finally done, so take it off the heat, and while it's cooling down, you can give it a good shake and blow to get rid of the chaff. It's kind of messy, so you can do this outside if you can. And finally, you're done. Pretty easy, right? At this point, most roasters would just let these guys sit in a container to off gas for a couple of days before selling it. You get more of a consistent result that way, but I find it fun to taste the super fresh stuff. It's usually quite a lot brighter tasting than if we were to let it sit out. To taste it, just run it through a grinder. I got a little more in depth on what kind of grinders are available in my coffee video from before if you want to check that out. I also do have a giant professional grinder, but a few of you asked me about some more affordable options, so I'm going to be testing out this guy today, which has a lot of positive reviews online. I'll leave some of the details down below if you want to try it out, not sponsored or anything. It's pretty decent, especially for the price, though after a few months of use, I have noticed a definite bit of unevenness in the grind. Might make a difference for espresso, but for drip, it works perfectly fine. Speaking of, after a quick drip, we'll give this guy a taste. Wow, it's surprisingly very different from the Ethiopian irgachefe that we made last time. While that one was super rich and almost caramelized tasting, this Kaʻū roast is more on the fruity end with a little bit of funk. It sort of tastes like wine and tropical fruits, but coffee if you know what I mean. Well, today was really fun. Again, huge thanks to Kaʻū Coffee Mill and to Pete, our wonderful guide. If you want to pay them a visit or maybe order something for yourself, I'll leave their info in the description below. And if you liked what you saw, feel free to leave a like down below. It really helps YouTube notice us. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. When we aren't doing a random farm tour, we love to do deep dives into a bunch of dishes from a bunch of random countries. So if you want to see your favorite food featured on the show, leave a suggestion in the comments down below and I'll add it to the list. And until next time, thank you so much for watching and I hope you have an awesome day.
I met your dad on a blind date at Starbucks coffee shop. He was sitting outside. I purposely showed up 10 minutes late. In the 90s, that was a thing. And he was very polite and very nicely groomed. His hair was nicely moussed and he was wearing a nice button-down shirt and nice pants and new shoes, and he was very polite. And he showed up in his father's Cadillac, a black Cadillac, and we went to Westwood and had sushi, and then we went to Bonaventure and had drinks, those drinks in pretty glass. So it was really cool. Okay, now day 2, the very next day, I met him at a pier in Newport Beach. And I did not recognize him. I didn't know he was the same guy because his hair was disheveled. And he was wearing a t-shirt over his belly and he was holding a giant cup of Slurpee, 7-Eleven red Slurpee, and he was going and I'm standing in front of him going, okay, I don't see anybody else here, so this must be the same guy I met yesterday. And I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there. And then he started explaining, oh, my glasses are way more comfortable than contact lenses. Oh, I only brought one nice outfit, and I wore them yesterday. These are my comfy clothes. The funny thing is, I don't know how other people would have reacted, but for me, after he explained, I thought, well, that's cool. He's pretty honest. Well, wow, he's different.